Hey everyone, I'm making this screencast, so if I'm not here tomorrow, we don't fall too far behind. Period 1 got further than period 5-6, so um, the beginning of this might be a bit repetitive, but I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. So the cheapest, most effective way to reduce waste is to not produce at all. This Healthy Choice meal over here has this plastic container with cardboard. It has something plastic that you probably pulled off the top. It has two other pieces, and most likely these aren't made of a material that is recyclable in our area. So this excess packaging of food and consumer products, we're a high consumer, high waste society. Reusing options are like the clean canteens, the reusable water containers, flea markets, yard sales, upcycling, using rechargeable batteries. Japan and most of Europe recycles almost all of its bottles about 20 times. So when you get a Coke, it's not in a plastic bottle, it's actually in a glass bottle. And those bottles are taken back to the factory. They are sterilized and they are refilled. Reusing products. The downside of reuse is that the salvaging poor are usually exposed to these toxins. That is a man who is in a canoe, and that is water, and it is just a bunch of floating debris. And if you look at it, most of it is plastic and like bamboo, light wood pieces. So this guy is looking to sell salvaged items. This is the good and the bad about reuse. It's on your notes. You can go through it at your own convenience. Okay, and composting is absolutely amazing. It works for biodegradable materials, your food scraps, sewage sludge, agricultural manure, and yard waste. It reduces yard waste in landfills. It can be sold or distributed to communities. And we call this stuff black gold because it is all of these nitrogen and nutrient rich things that are broken down into basically like a thick black dark soil. You can do it individually with these methods. You can build your own. You can use something crude like milk crates. You can buy a composter. And then you have municipal composting operations like they have in San Francisco. All of these links are on the class website as well. So recycling. The reprocessing of discarded materials into new useful products is the premise of recycling. It reduces space needed for landfills. It lowers the demand for raw resource. Sometimes it's less expensive than producing new raw materials, but sometimes it reduces energy consumption and air pollution, but sometimes it's more expensive and sometimes it actually increases energy consumption. Auto batteries are the biggest things that are recycled, and when you buy a new battery for your car, you pay a deposit, and you can get that deposit back when you bring them your old battery, and that is because they want them all recycled. Steel cans, aluminum packaging, paper and paperboard, yard waste, glass containers, plastic containers, tires. That's kind of the hierarchy. And then there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't get recycled. As you guys saw before, paper and paperboard is the number 1 thing that is in our landfill, and we really, really, really should reduce that. 2 types of recycling. Primary closed loop recycling, where the materials are recycled into the same thing. So aluminum cans, they are made into new aluminum cans. Secondary recycling is open loop recycling, and these are materials that are converted into other products. So tires are recycled and they are put onto tracks and they are ground up and used in playgrounds and stuff like that. Also, a lot of plastic bottles, the number 1 bottles, they'll make into reusable grocery bags and into something called Primaloft. I believe it's Primaloft, which is a synthetic type of material that they make fleeces out of. So pre-consumer is internal waste. So this is made from manufacturer waste that never actually made it to the consumer. So like scraps, rejects, and trimming, things that end up on the factory floor, those things are now repurposed into something new rather than just going into the trash. Post-consumer means that it's been used by a consumer and it comes back and then made into something else. So like aluminum cans and newspapers, you place in a recycling bin for pickup, they get made into either the same things or different things. So with paper manufacturing is a huge consumer of energy. You use huge amounts of water and you pollute huge amounts of water. The US recycles about 50% of paper. It's a big process. You have to remove the ink, the glue, you have to convert it into pulp, press it back into paper. It conserves resources because now new trees don't need to be cut down. It saves landfill space. Chlorine isn't needed to bleach the fibers again. And every ton of recycled paper saves 17 trees, 7,000 gallons of water, a whole bunch of energy, and a lot of landfill space. So you can take a look at this image of how paper is actually made and then how paper to paper just keeps going in that endless loop. So kind of no matter where you stop, it's going to loop around again. So glass, the US recycles about 25% of our glass. It costs less to recycle the glass than to create new glass. It can be used to make other things like glassfault, where they use it as a filler inside of the asphalt, and that decreases actually the heat capacity of the road because the black will hold more than the glass actually does. Recycling aluminum is really, really energy efficient. 1 ton of aluminum saves 4 tons of bauxite, which is the raw material that's used to make these cans, a lot of petroleum, coke, and pitch. Okay, so coke is the stuff that they add to the bauxite, the coke and the pitch they add to the bauxite. Just like when you are making steel, you add coke to iron. And it keeps a lot of aluminum fluoride out of the air. It the energy use for recycling is about 95% of the energy it takes to create a new one than it does to recycle it. So about 5% is what it takes to make an aluminum can from an aluminum can. So recycling saves lots and lots of energy. And this is a fun little infographic you can take a look at. Okay. So here we go. We were talking about this a bit today. This is the recycling symbol. This means that an item can be recycled. It doesn't mean that it has been recycled, but it's what the consumer can do with it. Plastics usually have a number in the middle, and it identifies the type of plastic. So number 1 is PET, 2 is HDPE, 4 is LDPE. Those are a lot of the bags that grocery bags and bags that like papers and newspapers come in. 5 is your yogurt containers and other things like that. Number 1 are water bottles, and 2 are a lot of times water bottle lids. So 3, 5, and 6, 4 and 7, I believe, are not accepted in Monmouth County. Whole Foods does take 5, and more places are starting to accept number 4. All right, so recycling plastics. Plastic is made from resins created by oil and natural gas, excuse me, and most of these containers are actually discarded. Only 4% of plastics are recycled. Price of oil is low, so virgin plastic is cheap to make. And so it's really a lot less expensive to make new plastic from raw materials than it is to recycle them. So when you have a water bottle, it either takes on water and sinks, or it doesn't take on water and it floats. And that's how we ended up with the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And this plastic biodegrades, not biodegrades, photodegrades. And so what that is it just breaks up into smaller pieces. It doesn't actually go away. And it gets into the food chain, it kills seafood, it kills wildlife, and it's really, really bad. So this is IntelliLoft. I said PrimaLoft, but it's IntelliLoft. And what they do is they take these plastic bottles, they're cleaned, they're disinfected, they're chopped into itty bitty flakes, melted, liquefied, and re-engineered into an IntelliLoft fiber. And it's made into eco-friendly fabrics. So this is post-consumer waste. This is open loop recycling. A little bit about these plastics. You do not need to memorize these plastics. You just should know that number 1s and 2s are recyclable in our area and number 5s really are not, okay? PET, polyethylene terephthalate, is soft drink bottles, peanut butter jars. It can be recycled into fiberfill for sleeping bags, carpets, fibers, ropes, pillows. It's a highly versatile plastic. HDPE, milk jugs, butter tubs, detergent bottles, motor oil, and it can be recycled into heavier things like flower pots, trash cans, traffic barrier cones, detergent bottles. So things that you don't really want against your skin. Polypropylene is yogurt containers, straws, pancake syrup bottles, bottle caps. It can be recycled into plastic lumber, like instead of having a real wood deck, you have the type of plastic that I can't think of right now. But in Jersey, we don't recycle it. 6 is disposable hot cups, and New York City banned styrofoam in July 1st, 2015. It was overturned, but I think actually it was redone. I actually don't think you can get styrofoam in New York City. Bioplastics are plastics from soybeans, which is not a new concept. But what happens is you need a catalyst that's going to speed up the reaction because you don't want to put your water in your plastic cup and it melt away. But you also don't want it to sit in a landfill for 45 years before it decomposes. So we make these bioplastics out of corn, soy, sugarcane, and they're engineered in a certain way to last a certain amount of time. Tires. We make playground equipment, trash cans, garden hoses, carpets, roofing materials out of old tires, and 36% of tires are currently recycled to make other products. Tires used to be a really hard thing to recycle, and now not so much anymore. But they are really rather expensive to recycle, but they also take up a lot of room in landfill and cause lots of issues in landfills. So if you notice in New Jersey, 40% or more, we recycle 40% more of our stuff, which is really great. But the fact that a lot of states it's 0 to 9%, and that 40% or more, I really like to see a 70% or more figure, but you just don't have the rates to justify that. Okay, and then here are your advantages and your disadvantages of trade-off, and recycling trade-offs. So take a look at these. They're also on your notes. And other factors that hinder recycling is raw materials in market prices. We don't really consider those. And so you can have really cheap raw materials, but the environmental costs are not considered into those raw materials and the extraction costs of them. So the more government of tax breaks and subsidies for resource extraction are also what hinder recycling. So you have a lot of subsidies for the mining of these raw materials. So the true cost of these materials actually isn't factored into our cost of them. And we have a huge lack of a market for recycled materials. Most of our recycled materials are actually shipped abroad and recycled abroad or thrown away abroad. So that's something that's really sad. Somebody said something in one of my classes that Coca-Cola is one of the largest companies that can enact change. And if you had Coca-Cola saying, hey, you know what, we're not going to really push the plastic bottles, we're going to bring back glass. And to all of our restaurants that we supply to, what we're going to do is instead of selling them plastic bottles, we're going to sell them glass bottles. And of course, soda fountains are a better alternative to that. But if you have these big companies that want to affect change, they can. Okay, so that's it for today, and I'll see you guys either tomorrow or on Friday.